AJ, welcome to the show, man.
I'm thrilled to be here, Justin. Let's go.
We recently got introduced, and I feel like I've talked to you a number of times at this point, and I'm excited to dive into your story and your journey and where you're at now. But where I want to start is, what does more mean to you?
Hmm. Great question. And let's get going. Let's jump right into it, right? Um, More means a lot of things to me, but where I sit today at this part of my life, more is not about the things that I thought I wanted in the past, right? In the past, more meant to me, and I'm thinking you may be asking me from a career standpoint, maybe not. You sort of left it open, but I'm answering from a career perspective. More in the past meant more money, more job titles, a bigger team, more team members, more direct reports, more bigger remit, not proper English. More to me now means something very different. It means more fulfillment, more possibilities, more joy, more time with my family, more being authentically me, and honoring that truth. And so it's been a big shift for me in my life, and in many ways, more means less. In the
Yeah.
traditional sense of the word is how we use it, maybe here in the States around, oh, we need more. You always need more room in your house, more cars in the driveway, more clothes in the closet, more fall, we're getting into the fall weather here, more fall clothes, more winter clothes, whatever it is. And I think, for me, things have changed considerably in that regard, and more is less, and more is more focus on the things that aren't tangible: joy, purpose, fulfillment, meaning, alignment, authenticity.
Yeah, and I wanted to have you on the show because these are things that I talk about all the time. And obviously, I realized it at a younger age where I realized I was burning the candle at both ends. And we'll get into your story as how you kind of ran across it and how the world kept showing you you need to slow down in so many ways. But
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
society tells you, especially as men, society tells you that you need to go out and get the all the money, get the big house, get all the things, and run until you can't run anymore. But sometimes for many people, it becomes too late when they realize it. I want to get a little bit into your story, and I'd love for you to share kind of the moment for you where you're like, wait, it's so much more than just things.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, my aha moment was a very real situation. Um, just to provide some background and context, back, for many years rather, I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's where I started my career after college. I was in financial services. My wife and I got married and lived in San Francisco, and then we had two kids. We moved over the Golden Gate Bridge to a place called Marin County, and from there I commuted 3 hours a day in and out of the office in the financial district of San Francisco. And to me, that was my normal. That's what it was. I had a nice job, had a nice comp plan. I could hopefully make a nice impact on the business. At least I tried to. And that just was my normal. And for all intents and purposes, we didn't want for things at the grocery store. We took nice vacations, good cars in the driveway, could afford to send our kids to a private school if that's the direction that was right for our children. And that was just what I was doing. And that's the world in which I lived until one fateful day, October 8th, 2016, just to go back in the way back machine here for a minute. I was mountain biking with three friends of mine. And if anyone of your listeners are familiar with the area, it's very hilly. In fact, fun fact, mountain biking was invented in Marin County. There's an abundance
Wow.
of really good fire trails and single track trails and stuff like that, great hiking trails. So we were going up a pretty steep pitch here on a fire trail when I suffered a Widowmaker heart attack, a full blown Widowmaker heart attack. By good fortune and some quick thinking by my friends, they were able to get me down the hill into a car at the trailhead, and my friend raced with me to the hospital. I found out, no, I mean, the fastest way to get into the ER, I'm going to give your listeners a hacking code here. I walked into the tree. I was able to walk somehow. I had extraordinary pain in my chest and was nauseous like you couldn't believe, and was tingly in my hands. And I said to the triage desk, I'm Adrian Jones. I'm 46 years old. My chest hurts and I'm having trouble breathing. No sooner had I said that than I had a gurney right next to me, and they whisked me into the ER, and I had a defibrillator put on my chest, and all the things that you see in the movies or the TV shows was happening to me. They raced down. Just I got to add this part to the story that
Of
it's really
course.
important to who I am. and I hope we're allowed to use some colorful language on this show. But
Absolutely.
when they were running down the from the ER room to the cath lab is where they do emergency procedures for cardiac care. I had at least two or three nurses, at least two, maybe three, pushing the gurney and pushing the IV lines that were on my chest. I was still in my mountain biking gear, and I was in extraordinary pain. And I had three very clear and distinct thoughts. And I'm really grateful for them because they informed so much of what I'm doing and who I am. The first thought was, I don't want my wife, Liz, to fly home a widow. She was away in Colorado for a project, and I just didn't want it to go down that way. I didn't want to put that at her feet. If I had any say in anything, I wanted to have a proper goodbye if this was my time to check out. The second thought I had was, why did I run out of my house to go mountain biking and I didn't tell my kids I love them? And I
Mm.
vowed in that moment to all the higher powers that I could make a promise to that that would never happen again. My kids need to know, and my those that I care about need to know how I feel about them. If it's the last thing they hear me say, which led me to my third thought, where it gets a little colorful. Just before they pushed open the doors into the cath lab, I had this very stealing thought, this resolve that just kicked into high gear. It was like, it's not fucking going down today. I'm walking out of this hospital of my own 2 feet of my own fucking volition, and that's exactly what's about to fucking happen. And excuse me for those that might be offended there, but that's literally what was going down. That's what was my soul was telling me, my brain was telling me, my fight or flight, my adrenaline was telling me, like, you got to fight this, and you're stronger than this, and you have agency, which is crazy to think. But anyways, so I wanted to provide that little bit of context there, that vignette of my story. But to really answer your question, so I was put on leave from work for 4 months, which was fantastic, and I'm very grateful for my employer for doing that. And those early days after I got discharged from the hospital, I would lay in bed and stare at the ceiling. All right, I don't have to go to work for months. This is a whole new world. I am a heart attack survivor. Never saw it coming. It hit like a freight train, and I'm grateful to be here. But, universe, what do I do? Do I go back to my old world in that 3 hour daily commute? Is that what I do and get on that corporate America hamster wheel, working for a large financial services firm? Do I resign and do something different, be a stay-at-home dad? Do you try to write the next great American novel? Maybe join the Peace Corps, or become a teacher, or give back to the greater good of society in some capacity. And I would wrestle with these, with what I should do, and I really hope that the universe would help me out a bit here. And eventually, the answer came, and it was like a voice that said, "Use your story to help and inspire others."
Mm.
And for me, in that moment, it was like I got hit by a lightning bolt. It was a thunderclap. Like, this is it. This is what needs to happen. This is exactly what I need to do. I have no earthly idea what this is going to look like and what shape it's going to take, what form it's going to take, and when it's going to happen. But this is my commitment, that I'm going to help others and inspire others and ultimately hope to get them to get more out of life. And I guess to answer your question, which I took a long answer to, but thank you for indulging me there, is that was the moment that I'm going to walk away from this old world that had been good to me financially, and it enabled me to provide for my family. All very important things, don't get me wrong. But the reality was that that world became so hollow and foreign to me. And I actually, after my 4 months was over, I went back to work. And I lasted about 5 months before I resigned, without much of a plan in place, other than I was going to continue to focus on how I could help and inspire others. But that was that moment where it was time to surrender the things that I had held on to so tightly. About the more of the first question you asked me, I need to make more money, get more in my bonus, get more stock options. We'll take more vacations and all the things. And in that moment, it was gone.
Mm.
It didn't matter to me anymore. I mean, it matters to an extent. Yes, we have to pay to keep a roof over our head and to eat and whatever, but there's something else out there for me. And I need to do this and give back and create something. At that time, I didn't know what it was, but to help people.
Yeah. No, I love that. And like, so most people think when somebody has a heart attack at a young age. You said you were what age at the time?
I was 2 days before my 47th birthday, so 46, almost
Okay.
47.
Most people think, overweight, not healthy, all these things. You were mountain biking up a steep pitch. You weren't any of those things. Do they know why it happened?
Yeah. And so I was reasonably fit. I could always have been fitter, but I did yoga a bunch in those days. So, and I thought I was on top of my diet. I was diagnosed with elevated cholesterol, as they called it, in my 30s at some point. So I was just very aware of eating meat and stuff like that. But ultimately, uh, this will take the conversation another direction. I'm not sure. But what happened was going up that steep ascent, my plaque ruptured and collected in my left anterior descending artery,
Huh.
which is the Widowmaker artery. It carries the greatest amount of oxygenated blood into the heart. And when that's why they call it the Widowmaker. When it becomes occluded or blocked, it causes a real problem in your heart and it has an attack and could lead to cardiac arrest and ultimately death. And so that's from a clinical perspective, what happened. Why? Well, therein lies the question. And so I'll add something into this conversation, Justin. I'm adopted. And I went out as a result of this heart attack to go find my biological family to get answers. Like, why on earth did this happen? Is this congenital? Like, what else is going on in my genes? I need to know this for me, but also for my two children and their children. Like, what's going on in our genetics here? And that search was quick. I partnered up with a genealogist, and we found both my biological parents and three half sisters very quickly in the grand scheme of things. And what I did find out, and that reunion has been incredible and remarkable, and I'm so fortunate for the way that that has gone and continues to evolve and grow in a very beautiful way. But what I did find out is that on my biological mother's side, so the maternal line of my genes, heart disease is a serial killer, and has taken out a lot of my aunts and uncles, my biological aunts and uncles at early ages. So there's something in the system that has led to this condition.
Yeah, it's wild. And so obviously in 2016 this happens. You go back to work 2017, you decide to step away from your career without really having a plan. What was that moment like? Was it and what was it like for your wife to walk through that with you? Because I think sometimes we have to think in this entrepreneurial journey, we do have partners in it with us, even if they're not business partners, they're a partner. What was that whole experience like?
I'll tell you what, I just want to pause on that point right there. I couldn't have done anything that I have done since without the strength and support of Liz, my wife. Like, all credit to her in her wisdom and her courage and her steadfastness in support of kind of my journey that this prompted me to go on. Um, yeah, it was. It's a really good question because I go back in time. I was about to sever ties with everything that I'd spent a long time building, right? I mean, as one does in corporate America, I guess you do everything you can to climb up the ladder and prove your worth and build a reputation and a network and get your wins and accomplishments under your belt and all the things. And I thought I'd done that to the best of my capabilities. Wasn't always amazing. Definitely stubbed my toe a few times, but ultimately, net, it worked well for me. And to walk away from that and just, it was almost just like dusting your hands off in a way. But I was so confident in this calling. I guess that's the thing that maybe not everyone gets this thing that I had, which was go help and inspire others. Like, it was crazy direct and clear to me that this is what I needed to do. And come hell or high water, I was going to figure out how to do it. So, but the universe has a funny way of working in many ways. I left without a plan and I resigned, and they were very good to me. And I walked out the door like, okay, universe, here we go. And a friend of mine who runs a wealth management firm with an office very close to my house said, "Hey, Jones, I hear you're a free agent. Like, maybe we could get the band together and try something out, and let's try it for a year. And you could figure your stuff out, but I could use your help with these things." I said, "Yeah, let's try it." And it was a very generous thing that he offered me, and so we took a swing at a few things there with his company, and then I just tried to figure out how I could help people. And it was a nights and weekends, whole program there. But ultimately, yeah, it's scary. Kids were going to be going to college at some point, and I was walking away from, a nice comp plan with good benefits and the whole everything, all the cash and prizes. But I knew that there was something bigger for me to do.
Yeah. And I think this is an important message for people to hear because often we find ourselves in something that's comfortable, even though it's not necessarily fulfilling, right? Like, but at the end of the day, isn't that that's the human journey, right? We need to kind of find out our purpose and our calling and lean into that and whatever that looks like. And sometimes people get a calling at a younger age or an older age, or, sometimes they get it. I mean, I know people who start the journey at 70 to finally know
Mhm.
their calling and they begin to travel down that road. And it's like, just unbelievable. But at the end of the day, like we have to answer that or we're not going to feel fulfilled. So what does that now look like for you in order to serve people? Like that first question I asked you was, what is more to you? Because that's your framework and that's what you teach and that's your community. Talk a little bit about that and why that's the important calling now.
Yeah. So um, I'll answer it this way. So I started when I went to my friend's firm and had my nights and weekends work. I started to blog anonymously because A, I didn't have the confidence to put my face and name out there on something, and B, being in financial services is incredibly regulated, and it just made sense to me to do this anonymously, and so I did that, and I started with my first platform was around heart disease prevention and awareness. Like, I'm a heart attack survivor. Of course, I'm going to go out there and talk about that. Maybe not, of course, but that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
do. And if I could just create some awareness that would save somebody's life, like, hallelujah. So that was my first pillar. My second pillar, and I'm using the word pillar very generously because I was starting from nothing. So there was no pillar. But, anyways, I'll use it liberally here. So, my second pillar was around adoption, reunion, and advocacy for adoptees, right? I just was going through the process of my own reunion. The commercial DNA companies like Ancestry and then 23andMe were blowing up, and all these genetic surprises were happening all around the world. And if I could just lend a voice out there to people who are going through it, and I partnered with my genealogist who helped me with my search to help her clients who are going through the process. If I could just help them, be a sounding board, answer their questions, assuage their fears that they have or whatever, great. Which ultimately led me to a third pillar, which I hadn't really articulated, but it was forming. And it was around living your authentic truth and honoring that and just being true to yourself. And with time, that started to take hold. And we got into COVID. And like so many of us, I ordered a mic from Amazon and started a podcast during those early COVID days. Like, what else am I going to do? Well, I guess I'll start a podcast. And it was called Profound Awesomeness. And I figured if I could just put out stories to the universe from, the tragedy to triumph, calamity to conquering, breakdown to breakthrough, however you want to say it, if I could put those stories out there with no call to action to me or anything, just maybe someone would hear them and it would help them, or they could share it with a loved one who's going through something similar, whether it was surviving major health scare, a traumatic accident, or paralysis, or whatever it was. And ultimately, that just led me to the point where I was like, I got to go in on this full time. So I ended up doing the ultimate trust fall with the universe and launched a company called More. And what it is a destination for high performing, accomplished professionals who know there's more out there. And the whole design of this is designed around three things: coaching, curriculum, and community. And I think I'll start, maybe work a little backwards there. So, one of the things that's so important to me when I left my buddy's firm and went to another wealth management company. And I just was, not in the best aligned place. And I was really struggling with where my purpose and how do I really execute this calling, but I was still feeling compelled to be getting a W-2, and I was wrestling with all sorts of stuff. And I would spend loads of time on LinkedIn, just doom scrolling, looking for leads and opportunities that might present themselves for me to go work in this new world of helping and inspiring, the human potential space. And I really wrestled with it and felt really lonely and depressed. And I was suffering in silence in so many ways, if I'm being completely honest. And ultimately, I decided when I created More, I wanted to eliminate some of those emotions by people who want to go through transformation. So they don't feel isolated. They don't feel lonely. They don't feel unsupported. They don't have a cheerleader and an idea factory by them. And so I wanted to bring in this whole concept of community, and communities are so helpful as we go through whatever transition or transformation we come up with, whether it's alcoholics going to AA or women becoming pregnant for the first time and they have support groups, or losing your spouse and having support groups to help you with that grief. Like on and on and on, right? Why can't there be something similar where you bring really like-minded people to engage, help you share ideas, expand your network, talk about some really cool stuff, and hopefully get you moving towards a great platform or path for you rather. So community is a big component. What we're doing at the company called More Again, we've got curriculum that I created after. Don't know if we're going to get to this, but I'm going to jump in there. My second heart attack in early 2024, when I really sat down and thought about what is, in my mind, the true source of joy. And what's really, really important when you strip it all away, where do we really connect with each other? Where do we connect with ourselves? It's around authenticity. And I felt like, gosh, if I could create a way to help people get truly in tune with who they are, if they go through this career transformation and build from that moment of understanding of where their authentic core values are and what they truly hold dear to themselves. We all have our own set of core values. We all have our own thumbprints and on and on. So that's fine. We could help people get authentically true and honor who they are. Then we could build out potentially great career paths for them. So I wrote a book that's coming out in early 2026. And it delves into this whole concept of authenticity. From that, I created workshops and a curriculum for our members to go through. And then we have great coaches on the platform who help, who co-facilitate the workshops with me and are available for one-to-one coaching. They have great experience in careers. And so that's what More is. And I started it from scratch and just building it out and trying to create a destination for people who are like, God, I know there's more out there. I know I have permission to go for it, but I don't know what it looks like. Maybe I don't have the confidence, maybe I don't have the clarity. Maybe it's a germ of an idea that I want to flesh out. Whatever it is, we want to give people a place and a space to explore that and hopefully get aligned with who they are and where they want to go with this next chapter, right?
Yeah. So I don't want to just breeze past it. We were going to get there. Your second heart attack in 2024.
Yeah.
Take us to that moment. What were you thinking? Because you knew what was happening at this point. The first time you were probably a little confused. The second time you knew what was going down.
Yeah. The second time was really scary. The first time, um, you might be listening to my story and go, wow, that must have been scary. I didn't know what was happening. When I was up on the mountain bike trail, literally, I was thinking that I had food poisoning from sushi because I did a father-daughter dinner date the night before. And I thought, okay, well, I drew the short straw. I got the sashimi with a side of bacteria and that's what led to indigestion and heartburn and all this sort of stuff. That's what I thought it was until the doctors at the ER told me, no, Mr. Jones, you're having a heart attack. This time, so this was Saturday, April 13th of 2024. Kids were at college. Liz was out running errands. And I decided to go to the gym like a good little survivor and work my heart and get my heart rate up and be healthy. So I sat on the recumbent bike and listened to a podcast and then came home after a good sweaty workout, stepped in the shower, got shampoo in my hair, and boom, that very unwelcome and terrifying pain set in my chest. I knew in an instant what it was this time. I got out of the shower. My hands and arms were so tingly, I could barely hold the towel to dry myself off. I called Liz and she's like, why are you calling me? You got to call 911 now. And I did. And 3 minutes and 40 seconds later, the fire truck arrived, followed by the paramedics. Um, and that it was terrifying. And I'll tell you, the whole time I was waiting for them when I was on 911 with the operator, I knew what was happening. They had me chew on some aspirin and wait for the paramedics out. Well, it was the fire department first out front. And I knew the whole time. I knew the pain. It was so my body clicked into high survival mode. And Justin, you'll appreciate this. So the two firemen came running up the stairs. I'm sitting on a chair on our front porch, right? And I'm in pain. I'm wheezing. I'm stressed out because if you know anything about strokes and heart attacks, time is of the essence. Every second counts. And so I'm sitting there. I'm like, guys, and they one fireman on my left put on an EKG, put leads to do an EKG to measure the electrical rhythms of my heart. The other fireman on my right arm put on a blood pressure cuff. And I'm telling him, guys, we got to go. We got to go to the hospital. I'm having a heart attack. And the guy on the left who's watching the EKG monitor is shaking his head no, like, yeah, like he's not seeing anything that would be alarming. And he looks
Huh.
up at the other guy on the right who's monitoring my blood pressure. So they make some knowing eye contact. And the guy on the right said to me, Mr. Jones, is there any chance that this is an anxiety attack? Are you suffering from anxiety? And I looked at him. I said, no shit, I am. I'm having a heart attack. Let's go to the hospital. And mercifully, the paramedics came right after that and just got me into the cabin of the ambulance. And it was there that the paramedic in the back, they were still looking at an EKG machine, was all still hooked up. And he looked at me, and goes, "Oh, there it is." And he got on his yeah, microphone, and or not mic, whatever it is, the CV, what is it called? The radio, I guess,
Yeah,
radio.
yeah,
There it is.
yeah.
Got on the radio and said, called in a code 3. And if you know anything about the emergency levels, there's code 1, code 2, code 3. Code 3 is very high. It's in the medical world. It's a life threatening situation. So they did lights and sirens and blasted through all the intersections, and it was about a 3+ mile drive to the hospital. Back I went to the same place I had my first one, and I got to tell you, that was the longest drive of my life. I
I
had them
bet.
tell me every intersection we were going through because I wanted to know exactly where we were on the way. And I was just trying to breathe, just trying to breathe, just trying to breathe, and just hang in there, hang in there, hang in there. This is not going to happen. You survived it once, you can do it again. Um, and fortunately, I did. And yeah, I had another full blown Widowmaker heart attack, and I was ultimately coming out the other side of that. It was very destabilizing. I felt like I got the ultimate life leg sweep. You figure for several years you're doing all the right things. You change your diet, you give up drinking, you stay healthy and exercise, all the things, and it still happens. And that rocked me to my core. That was hard to process.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as I hear your story, there's so many people who experience these types of things and they become a victim, right? And they'll sit in their sadness and this is me, there's nothing I can do to protect it or change it or whatever, right? Like obviously this is the fate life has dealt me, but you take it as a calling to step into your ultimate power and help other people do the same thing. Why do you think that's the case instead of playing the victim?
Oh, for me,
Yeah.
um, I guess I just refuse to let that situation control my life. I refuse to have my life defined by my cardiac disabilities. Um, I heard someone say it. One of the things I got very involved with the American Heart Association. I mean, I still am. I've raised a bunch of money for them. I've been a keynote speaker at some of their events back in California. And I heard one of they call them survivor speakers that they have at their events. And I heard a really courageous girl, a young lady, I guess, say she was talking about her stroke, and she said it so eloquently. I had the stroke. The stroke didn't have me.
Mm.
And I thought that was so poignant. And I want to give her all credit and kudos to her saying that because that's exactly how I feel. I had the heart attack. It didn't have me. I'm in control of this and I'm not going to let it define me. I'm actually going to use it as a beautiful constraint in my life to do something better instead of playing the victim, instead of falling back into old patterns and habits and trying to pretend it never happened. This was a chance to make bold changes. That I felt like I needed to do, and I have been rewarded by them. And so, yeah, it's easy. There are a lot of people who are survivors of whatever calamities who go back to their world because there are a lot of reasons, and no shade to what any of those reasons. Whether it's I can go back to that world because I know how that job is done, that life is led. I get a salary, I get benefits. I don't have to worry about my medical bills if it's a medical crisis. Some people just want to pretend it never happened, don't want to talk about it, and just hope it stays in the closet. Everyone has a different response, and that's fine. But for me, it was like, it was, as we've talked about, it was like, this is it. You got to go do this, and I'm signing up for it. I'm going to figure it out. Even if I have to do a massive trust fall with the universe, which I'm sort of in the process of doing, so be it. But the universe will sort things out, and I'm not measuring things, Justin. I don't measure things right now in dollars. I'm measuring things in impact, and we'll just see how that goes.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I always years ago I was with a group of people. I attended an event in Ohio and shared an Airbnb with a Bellator MMA fighter who runs a nonprofit and a massive keynote speaker who shared the stage with like Tony Robbins. He is a guy born with no legs and one arm. And we were sitting around talking about some of the work we were doing, and the guy who was running the nonprofit, he's like, I want to give so much, I want to give so much that I'm not making any money, right? And I was like, well, there's something called ROI, which is actually return on impact, right? The universe
Mhm.
will find a way to repay you if you're willing to accept that. But I measure my wins in impact, and I know that the universe will take care of me on the back end. And so that's such a profound thing because when that's your focus, when your focus is give first, everything else falls into place. And I think that that's the ultimate approach to what you're doing, and why so many people should hop on the more bandwagon and go on this ride with you, because when you're in the impact driven space, everything you do matters. Meaning, like, everything you say, everything you're giving them all has a purpose, and has a step in the right direction, which I absolutely love. But I want to ask you a two-part question that I ask every single
Okay.
person on this show. The first question is, what is your definition of success? And the second thing is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Huh. Great. I'm glad you asked. So my definition of success, well, in many ways, happiness, I think, is success, but I want to take it even deeper. Um, Success for me is being able to wake up every day, being my true self, not wearing the masks I used to wear in my old life, in my old career, but just showing up every day as me with a whole mountain of gratitude. Every morning I wake up, I say, thank you for this day. And as you can probably imagine, what I'm going to add on to that, the success is, have I done anything today to help some people? And that's all done right now through my More platform, and the podcast that I just got rolling, which was great to have you as a guest, sir. But that's my definition of success. So that's part one. What are the three things I do every day to honor that? So the first thing I got to do is I got to be here. So I've got to take care of myself. I got to walk every morning, and I've got to be true to my diet and times of meditation or just timeouts. Stress is not my friend, and I'm not going to push myself in that way. So I can be here. So I can show up as fully me. That's one. Number two, success is also, or is it fulfillment? Right? Are we looking at if it's, how are we defining it? Right? You
Yeah,
know, Yeah, I look at it as fulfillment, right? Like this is fulfillment because fulfillment to me is success. So the first thing is just being me, being healthy, showing up, knowing that I'm doing what I can to fight the fight, to be here and is the best way I can for my family and my friends and the people that I'm working with through more. Two is, I guess tied to what I just said, is making a dent in the universe in some capacity. Uh, I've I used to think I was doing that in my old life, coaching soccer for the kids in our community and maybe whatever it was, helping out on some school activity or chaperoning this some field trip or something like that. But I'm driven by something a bit higher, but by a higher calling and trying to deliver something really big to help people break through and live really full lives. And then I think the third thing is, quite honestly, this is a tough one to get into, but I want to make sure that I bring love into what I do. I'm a very heart forward person. Maybe sometimes it gets me in trouble, but it's important for me to share that with the universe, with the environment, with my family, with the people I interact with, and letting that be okay.
I love it. I love it. So you grazed past the podcast. Shout out the podcast name real quick that I was an honor to be a guest on.
Yeah. Thank you for that opportunity. It's called Code 3 Life Reinvented. Code 3 colon life period reinvented period. And the Code 3, um, no surprise here, was an homage to what happened to me in that ambulance when they called in the code three. It was like a big awakening for me, and it's sort of used, if you will, to describe the guests that I have on their personal code threes. Hopefully, it's not as dramatic as an ambulance ride where you're on a life or death situation, but just an awakening, something that triggered your own personal code three. Like, hey, there's some urgency here for change, and we explore that both by people who've made pivots in their lives and careers, and academics and luminaries who explore these issues and the human potential space. So some really cool conversations, and yours was fantastic. So I was grateful to have you on, sir.
Thank you for saying that. So we've been talking a lot about life-threatening things, and so I'm going to ask you a question that probably hits home for you more than most that I've asked on this show. It's a question I ask a lot, not every time, but I ask a lot. And I want you to fast forward 50 years from now, towards the end of your life, and you're on your deathbed, and all the content that you've created and you're creating now, whether it be the podcast or whether it be the community or anything like that, all of that has been wiped away. It no longer exists, and you can only be remembered for one sentence. What would you want that sentence to be?
Mm. Hmm. I'm trying to be really pithy. My brain wants to be pithy, and I'm not sure that it will be, so I might flail here. Um, I think it'd be really simple. 3 words, maybe. He really cared.
Mm, I love it. It's powerful. Powerful stuff, man. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how can people find you, follow you, join the community? What's all the good stuff?
Great. Yes. Please visit. You can find me at my company website called More, M-O-R-E, careerwellness.com. Morecareerwellness.com. That's the place you can find what we're doing, or learn more about the business and how you can get involved, see if it's a fit for you. We also are on Instagram, more underscore starts underscore here. We just got that channel rolling. And the podcast, which I just mentioned, Code 3 Life Reinvented. Check it out. You'll hear my thoughts and some really great interviews that are coming up through that.
Very exciting stuff, AJ. So, like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is: in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Hmm. I think it's honestly what we talked about, to be perfectly honest. When you get rattled to your core, and I'm going back to what did we talk about? The part I want to get to is the 2016 heart attack. Um, I've had some really great moments of growth prior, which I'm fortunate for. I find that a lot of growth is comes through change and chaos and disruption in many ways, and can be very destabilizing and unsettling. But I think that's where the propulsion for growth really occurs. For me, it was that 2016 heart attack, and really having a really hard look at who I am as a person, how I'm showing up every day for my family and my community, what I want to do with the precious time that I have left. Do I want to just continue on that autopilot and that nice job and that looks good and sounds good at cocktail parties and on and on? But it did provide, don't get me wrong, like it played a very important role in our family. Or am I ready for something else? And do I have the courage to do it, to take that step into the unknown, to trust fall with the universe, to change everything, which I almost did. I mean, my friends and my family, my amazing wife, no, none of that was on the table for change, but everything else was. And I was ready for it. I don't think if I hadn't gone through that event in 2016, I would be here doing what I'm doing today.
I love it. AJ, thank you so much, man, for coming on and vulnerably sharing your story with my audience. I'm glad you're still here. I'm excited to see what you do with more going forward. And guys, please check them out. If the community is calling to you, follow along, join it, all that good stuff, man. AJ, thank you so much.
Justin, it's been great being here. Thank you for this opportunity.